Imagine the absolute biggest stage in global sports. The whole world is watching, right? The pressure is just suffocating. Now imagine that pristine stage rapidly devolving into a chaotic, totally unscripted battlefield. 16. That is the shocking number of yellow cards handed out in a single match. I mean, to put that into perspective, most games might see, 3 or 4? 16 means the official rulebook didn't just bend, it completely snapped.
And guys, it didn't even stop there. 4. That's the unprecedented number of red cards issued in that exact same game. 4 players literally banished from the pitch. To this day, it remains an absolute record for any FIFA World Cup match. We are talking about elite, world-class professionals just utterly losing their composure, turning a highly anticipated knockout match into a straight-up demolition derby. So how exactly did the beautiful game turn so incredibly ugly?
Okay, let's dive into this explainer. Today, we're looking at one of the most infamous spectacles in the history of international football, the 2006 World Cup round of 16 match between Portugal and the Netherlands. It's a game that has officially gone down in history under a rather dark, dramatic moniker, the Battle of Nuremberg.
Part 1. The Battle of Nuremberg, June 25, 2006.
Part 2. High stakes and bad blood, unbeaten rivals.
To really understand this powder keg, we have to set the scene back on June 25, 2006. We're inside the sweltering, stifling Frankenstadion in Nuremberg, Germany. The stakes? Astronomical. Both Portugal and the Netherlands came into this knockout stage completely undefeated. But the bad blood here ran way deeper than just wanting to advance in the World Cup. Just 2 years prior, Portugal had actually eliminated the Dutch in the semifinals of Euro 2004, and they did it on Portuguese soil. So the Netherlands arrived desperate for revenge, while Portugal was determined to prove their golden generation was still supreme. You can literally feel this pressure cooker building when you look at the men in the technical areas. On one side, you've got veteran manager Luiz Felipe Scolari for Portugal. Big Phil came into this match with a flawless, unbelievable 10 out of 10 World Cup record. He'd won 7 straight to take the 2002 trophy with Brazil, and then 3 more in the 2006 group stage. Now opposite him is Marco van Basten. A legendary player turned manager, he led a really youthful, fast-paced Dutch side, and, get this, he was undefeated in competitive matches as their coach. 2 unstoppable forces were about to collide. Something absolutely had to give.
Part 3. First blood and the goal, the beautiful and the ugly game.
The hostility here wasn't some slow burn. It was instantaneous. Literally 2 minutes after the opening whistle, Dutch midfielder Mark van Bommel gets a yellow card for a rough tackle from behind. It was pretty clear the Dutch had decided that physical intimidation was going to be their main tactic to disrupt Portugal's rhythm. And man, that intimidation escalated violently just 5 minutes later. In the 7th minute, Dutch defender Khalid Boulahrouz launches into this vicious, studs-up challenge directly into the thigh of young Portuguese star Cristiano Ronaldo. It left a clear, nasty mark. But incredibly, and you really won't believe this, the referee only issued a yellow card. The damage, however, was definitely already done. Ronaldo tried to play through the intense pain, but by the 34th minute, he was forced off the pitch. He was actually weeping as he was substituted. He later famously stated, "There was a contract on my head." The physical tone was set right then and there, and the Portuguese camp was absolutely furious.
Yet juxtaposed right in the middle of all this early violence was a singular moment of pure, beautiful footballing brilliance. In the 23rd minute, Portugal's Maniche navigates the chaos to score a stunning goal, set up by a gorgeous pass from Pauleta. And spoiler alert, it turned out to be the only goal of the entire game. But rather than settling the match down, this goal basically poured gasoline on the fire. I mean, put yourself in the shoes of the Dutch players for a second. Imagine training your whole life for a World Cup, only to find yourself losing to your bitter rivals while getting physically battered in this sweltering heat. Panic sets in. The Dutch grew increasingly desperate to equalize, and their tackles shifted from, tactical intimidation to just sheer uncontrolled frustration.
Part 4. Total loss of control, the powder keg explodes.
As the second half dragged on, it became glaringly obvious that Russian referee Valentin Ivanov had completely lost his grip on the match. Players realized the official was really struggling to maintain authority, and they ruthlessly took advantage of it. It wasn't just aggressive tackling anymore. We're talking tactical fouls, extreme time wasting, touchline shoving, and outright retaliation. And honestly, nothing highlights the sheer absurdity of what was permitted more than the 59th minute. Because, why did the Portuguese captain headbutt his opponent? Amidst a highly tense stoppage in play, Luís Figo, a veteran, a respected leader, a former World Player of the Year, walks right up to Mark van Bommel and just headbutts him.
It happened slightly behind the referee's back, but when the dust settled, Figo was somehow only shown a yellow card. Yep, a blatant headbutt punished with merely a warning. Naturally, the Dutch players were absolutely incandescent with rage at the leniency.
When asked about his captain's blatant act of aggression after the fact, Portugal's manager Luiz Felipe Scolari didn't even try to apologize. Instead, he delivered this incredibly memorable quote. He said, "Jesus Christ is capable of turning the other cheek, but Figo isn't Jesus Christ." I mean, wow. It perfectly encapsulated the ruthless, unyielding survival of the fittest mentality that had totally consumed both squads. Nobody was backing down. Nobody was turning the other cheek. So, let's track exactly how this total breakdown in discipline resulted in a historic, rapid-fire timeline of expulsions. It basically became a war of attrition. Right before the halftime whistle blew, Costinha gets his second yellow for a deliberate handball. He is gone. Then, fast forward to the 63rd minute. Bula Hrus, remember the guy who injured Ronaldo, catches Figo with a stray elbow to the face. Second yellow. He's gone. The exhaustion is really setting in now, and the tackles are just getting sloppier and sloppier. In the 78th minute, Portugal's Deco, after an incredibly cynical, reckless tackle and then intentionally delaying the restart, gets his second yellow. Gone. Finally, deep into stoppage time at 90+5, the Netherlands' Giovanni van Bronckhorst commits a foul, earns his second yellow, and the record-breaking fourth red card of the match is drawn.
And this brilliantly illustrates just how crazy things got. In a completely bizarre twist of fate, the sheer absurdity of the match spilled right over into the stands. After being sent off in the 78th and 95th minutes respectively, Deco from Portugal and Van Bronckhorst from the Netherlands found themselves in a highly surreal situation. You see, while they were bitter enemies on the pitch today, they were actually club teammates back at Barcelona, and there they were, literally sitting side by side on the concrete steps in the stands. They just sat together, chatting, watching the final chaotic moments of the brawl play out on the pitch below them. Just two club friends, both banished from the biggest stage in the world, taking in the madness together.
Part 5. The Aftermath and Legacy. The Dust Settles.
When the final whistle finally, mercifully blew, Portugal had miraculously held on to their 1-0 lead. They advanced to the quarterfinals. But man, it came at a massive cost, losing key players to suspension for the next round. Scolari later recalled the match by saying it felt like a volatile South American Copa Libertadores climate, just a game with absolutely zero fair play. And as the dust settled, the spotlight immediately turned to the man in the middle. Now you have to look at Valentin Ivanov's final disciplinary stats here because they are simply staggering. 16 yellow cards, 4 red cards. It stands as a dark monument in World Cup history. Critics heavily argue that by issuing so many warnings early on, without establishing firm, unbreakable control, he essentially fueled the adrenaline of the players. He created this vicious cycle of retaliation that he eventually became entirely powerless to stop.
And the fallout from this? It reached the absolute highest levels of international football. Sepp Blatter, the president of FIFA at the time, actually publicly slammed the Russian officials' performance on a global broadcast. Blatter bluntly stated, "The referee should have given himself a yellow card." This was a monumental and frankly exceedingly rare occurrence in football politics. The head of FIFA essentially threw his own selected official straight under the bus, publicly blaming him for failing to protect the players and failing to protect the global integrity of the World Cup itself.
So, when we look at where this match sits in the broader historical context, it firmly belongs in the pantheon of World Cup infamy. If you look at rankings of the most controversial matches of all time, the Battle of Nuremberg sits right up there at number 11. It shares space with the number 3 disgrace of Gijón, which was a match infamous for pure, cynical geopolitical manipulation, and the sheer physical violence of the number 7 Battle of Santiago, not to mention the number 1 most controversial game, Maradona's blatant, rule-breaking hand of God. It is just a prime example of how intense, tactical European rivalries can systemically collapse into outright violence when officiating fails to set the boundary.
Which brings us to the final thought I want to leave you with today. There are really 2 very distinct ways to view what happened that day in Germany. On one hand, officials and purists argue it was a dark day that completely destroyed the spirit of fair play, showcasing the absolute worst of professional sportsmanship. But on the other hand, a lot of fans will secretly admit that the sheer tension, the wild unpredictability, and the fierce national pride on display are exactly the kind of unscripted, raw drama that makes the World Cup absolutely unforgettable. So what does this all mean for you? Which side do you fall on? Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and remember to always keep questioning what happens on the pitch.